Is Mr. Conley for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bobulinski, in your deposition, you were asked about taking a picture of your phone, and you said, and I quote, "I still have that phone. I could put that phone on this table right here, and every person in this room could look at that individual text and validate that it's a legitimate text and the date and time stamp on it." Are you willing to provide the committee voluntarily with the BlackBerry referenced and that phone?
I'm willing to sit in a room with both the chairman and the ranking member with my phone and their staff, and we can go through each and every text message. As I said in my interview, I had a forensics expert plug into my BlackBerry, somebody who's done extensive work for the FBI for over 10 years with an interest of pulling all the data off that phone so I could provide it to the committee. Unfortunately, They were using Cellbrite software, which is the software that the FBI uses, and they were unable to pull the data off the phone.
Okay.
So I am more than willing to sit in a room with the Mr. Chairman and the ranking member and their staffs with that BlackBerry fully charged, and we can go through each and every message. If
That's some progress, and I appreciate that, but you can understand, I'm sure, why the committee wants to look at prima facie evidence on its own.
Well, I can't understand
excuse
why
me,
you're
sir.
trying to
Excuse me, sir.
that I
This
haven't
is,
cooperated.
Mr. Bobulinski, this is my time. You can understand why we would want to look at evidence raw and unvarnished so that we can make our own determination. But thank you for your willingness to cooperate, at least at that level. Mr. Parmes, you observed back in 2023 in a letter you sent to Chairman Comer that there were flagrant examples of Giuliani interfering in Ukrainian politics, unquote. Why would Giuliani be interfering in another country's politics?
I mean, Giuliani would do and say whatever he needed for the purpose of getting the information he wanted to secure Donald Trump 2020 election. So just a prime example of one of the things he did, he had a close relationship with then a boxer, Vladimir Klitschko, who was then the mayor in Ukraine. When the new president came over, there was rumors about maybe him not staying in office as mayor of Ukraine. Klitschko flew to New York, met with Rudy Giuliani, and then on a meeting that we had with Andrei Yermak in Spain that was relevant, had to do with President Zelensky announced an investigation into Joe and Hunter Biden. At that meeting, he also brought up the Klitschko situation and basically told Yermak that if Zelensky got rid of Klitschko, President Trump and the American people would be very upset about that because we love him and he needs to be in there.
So was Giuliani just doing this as a rogue on his own because he was a patriotic American who loved Donald Trump, or had somebody encouraged him to engage in this kind of political interference in another country?
I mean, I think he was encouraged by Donald Trump.
Personally?
Personally, yes.
That's your testimony?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. In your letter, you also said that Mr. Giuliani was to, quote, deliver a precise message in very strict words, unquote, with respect to the administration of the then newly installed president of Ukraine, President Zelensky. What did you understand a very strict message, or a message of very strict words, construed, and what was that message that you delivered that was in very strict words?
Yes, Congressman. He basically told me not to be nice, to be very stern, and relay the message that unless Zelensky announced an investigation into the Bidens by Monday, this was Sunday, that there would be no cooperation, no aid to Ukraine from the United States, and the Vice President Pence at the time that was scheduled to appear for the inauguration would not appear to the inauguration.
That would seem to corroborate that very famous and beautiful telephone conversation between President Trump then and President Zelensky, basically saying, but I need a favor, and hinting that there'd be withholding of military aid until that favor was delivered. Is that fair?
Oh, absolutely. I was a part of setting up that phone call, that famous phone call that Trump had with Zelensky.
I think your testimony is very important, Mr. Parnas, and it's under oath.
Yes, sir.
I thank you. I yield back.
Chair now recognizes Ms. Taylor Greene from Georgia for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Joe Biden continues to lie to the American people about his role in his family's businesses. In 2020, he stood up on stage of a presidential debate and told the American people that his family didn't take any money from China. That was a lie. Not only was it a lie, he knew it was a lie. He knew it because he met with his son, Hunter Biden's Chinese business associates. I want to talk about CEFC, which is the China Energy Fund Committee. Mr. Bobulinski, who is Chairman Yi?
Chairman Yi was the chairman of CEFC.
Thank you. Jim Biden told the FBI and IRS that Chairman Yi was the protege of Xi Jinping, the leader of China and the Chinese Communist Party. Mr. Bobulinski, Rob Walker told this committee that Joe Biden met Chairman Yi. Are you aware of that? Yes or no?
I am now. I wasn't at the time.
And Joe Biden also met with you, is that right?
Yes, he did. Twice.
Who is Director Zhang?
Director Zhang was the number 2 at CEFC.
The executive director of CEFC, the number 2?
Yeah, he was the number 2 executive, but really the point person that I worked with and the Biden family worked with, and he's the individual that Hunter Biden was shaking down at the end of July 2017, demanding that they fund the $10 million. They ultimately sent $5, but $10 million directly to Hunter Biden's account, Owasco.
Thank you, Mr. Bobulinski. I want to show you a text message that Hunter Biden sent to you and his other business associates. I'm holding it right here. I'll read it to you. Hey, Tony, I have an idea. In light of the fact we are at an impasse of sorts, and both James' lawyers and my chairman gave an emphatic no, I think we should all meet in Romania. He's speaking about my chairman. When Hunter Biden came in for his deposition, he said that he was referring to Chairman Yi, and that the rest of your group referred to Zhang as a different chairman. Does this make any sense to you?
That's a lie. I never heard Director Zhang referenced as chairman, and I had direct communications with Director Zhang over WeChat, met him in Romania, met him in Moscow, met him around the world in New York, trying to develop this business, and he was never referred to as the chairman, first of all. Second of all, that makes absolutely no sense in the context of this message because we are discussing Oneida Holdings, LLC.
Thank you. So he was not the chairman, just to clarify. Yes,
correct.
Or no? Okay. So I want to show you another text. When he said his chairman, he was talking about his dad. This is from Rob Walker. It didn't seem to make much sense to Rob Walker either. So he said that when Hunter, he said this to you, when Hunter was talking about his chairman, he was talking about his dad. When Rob Walker came in to give his transcribed interview to the committee, he basically said, well, Hunter was high or confused or mad. And Rob Walker said that he was just trying to calm things down between you and Hunter. But that doesn't really answer the question about who Hunter Biden is talking about. Hunter Biden lied to this committee. So here, clearly, he says, Rob Walker's saying he's talking about his dad. So I want to be very clear. We've established that Zhang is not the chairman, obviously. Is that correct? Yes or no?
Correct.
Let me show you another message. This message doesn't call Zhang Chairman Zhang, does it? It just says the Chinese want to do business with the Bidens. As a matter of fact, it says, both coming to be my partner, to be partners with the Bidens, with an S. He, Zhang, is implied, has implied that the number one has made it clear and available to him. Who is the number one?
The number one is Xi Jinping.
Xi Jinping, the president of China? Yes or no? The leader of the Communist Party, the CCP?
Yes.
Is the number one?
Yes, that's the number one that Hunter was referencing in that message.
Now, let's be very clear. This was in 2017, but I would like to make it known for this committee that Joe Biden told the press in 2016, as a matter of fact, I quote, yeah, I am going to run in 2020. He told the press in 2016 that he was running for president of the United States in 2020. So here is the Bidens doing business in China in 2017 when everybody knew he was planning to be president of the United States. Do you see that to be a serious problem, Mr. Bobulinski?
I do, and I wish this committee would thoroughly investigate it and focus on all the evidence that the SDNY has on CFC. They had FISA warrants, so they were recording conversations, and I wish they disclosed all that data and fact to this committee.
Thank you, Mr. Bobulinski. I yield, Mr. Chairman.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair now recognize Mr. Krishnamurti for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Parnas, Rudy Giuliani tasked you with, quote, a mission to travel the globe to find dirt to damage the Biden's reputation in the 2018-2019 timeframe, right?
Correct. Yes.
And this was in an effort to secure Trump's
Re-election.
re-election
2020.
as president in 2020, right?
Correct. Yes.
And by dirt, you mean evidence of wrongdoing or criminality, right?
Yes, sir.
And in your travels, you found, quote, precisely zero proof of the Biden's criminality, right?
Correct.
And there was no evidence of the Biden's corruption in Ukraine because, as you said, there truly was none, right?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Now, interestingly, you have looked for dirt around the world about the Bidens and specifically Joe Biden in particular, and you say the FBI, CIA, NSA have all failed to produce any evidence of criminal wrongdoing, right?
Correct.
Not only that, but former Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko stated, quote, there's not a single word of truth to these allegations about Joe Biden, right?
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Now, there's a guy named Yuri Lutsenko, who's the former prosecutor general of Ukraine, and he also, quote, confirmed that nothing ties the Bidens to criminal activity in Ukraine, right?
Correct.
And then there's another prosecutor general named Viktor Shokin, who also said he conceded, quote, that he had no evidence that either Joe or Hunter Biden had ever interfered with Ukrainian law, right?
Yes, sir.
And the reason you know this is because you talked to each of these people, right?
Yes, sir.
And your job was to try to dig up dirt or manufacture dirt, right?
Yes, sir.
And yet we have conducted months of hearings, and because there's been no evidence of wrongdoing, you've called this whole impeachment inquiry a, quote, wild goose chase, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, interestingly, we've heard from the other side that, quote, the real quid pro quo wasn't Donald Trump. It was Joe Biden when he tried to hold up foreign aid when he was vice president in exchange for firing the federal prosecutor in Ukraine that was investigating the corruption from his son. Now, you, again, looked for evidence to support this claim. There is no evidence, correct?
Correct. That was false.
In fact, firing the prosecutor would make it more likely that they would go after the company in question, Burisma, not less, right?
Well, the ironic part is the reason why majority of the world and Ukraine and the Obama administration wanted to get rid of Viktor Shokin because he was corrupt, not because he was investigating Burisma, because he was stalling investigations for UK that was looking into a $23 million they wanted to get out from Zlochevsky, and Shokin stalled that investigation.
So it was the logic is just the opposite of what the majority claims is to be the case, namely that they say that somehow Joe Biden was out to fire the prosecutor to reduce the chances of a prosecution of Burisma. But actually, in firing that prosecutor, he increased the chances of prosecuting Burisma, right?
Absolutely correct, yes.
So let me just talk to you about what some of the other witnesses in this impeachment inquiry have said. Jonathan Turley, the constitutional expert the Republicans brought forward, said there's no evidence of which he was aware to support impeaching the president. You agree with that, correct?
100%.
Garrett Graves, a colleague of ours, said just last week, quote, have I seen anything that is impeachable? No, I haven't. You agree with that statement as well?
Yes, sir.
Last year, our Republican colleague Ken Buck, who's about to retire, said that evidence of wrongdoing by President Biden, quote, doesn't exist right now. It doesn't exist now. It didn't exist then, right?
That's exactly true, sir.
Sir, how many times have you met Donald Trump?
Well over 10 times, I'd say. I'd have to count, but lots of times.
Is there anything that you'd like to relate to us about your conversations with Donald Trump that would bear on the conduct of these proceedings?
I mean, Donald Trump was aware of everything that was going on that day in the Red Room when we were in the White House. After Rudy bringing Donald Trump up to speed on that I could go out to Ukraine and get Viktor Shokin, Donald Trump approached me, shook my hand, said, "Thank you for all that you're doing. Keep up the good work," patted me on the back, took pictures, and I was off to Ukraine
To meet with Victor Shokin.
to find Victor Shokin, to bring him back here to meet with Lindsey Graham.
Got it. Thank you so much. I yield back.
Thank you.
Chair now recognizes Mr. Cloud from Texas for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Now, we have heard time after time Joe Biden, say that he had no knowledge whatsoever about the business dealings, and that changed. He had never allegedly had any conversation with Hunter. Then they moved the ball to say that, well, he didn't have any business dealings, he wasn't involved, didn't have any financial contribution. Since then, we've uncovered about 20 shell companies, and we have bank records that bring light to that. And while we can't cover all 20 shell companies in 5 minutes, I wanted to focus on one, and that is Rosemont Seneca Bohai. Rosemont Seneca Bohai is interesting, and Devin Archer had testified, and he said this in his testimony. He said that this entity, quote, was used as a common entity, owned 50-50 on a handshake deal between Devin and Hunter splitting these shares. Actually, that was your words, Mr. Galanis. Do you stand by those words?
Yes, I do.
And Devin Archer agreed with that. He said Hunter was a corporate secretary of RSB and had a handshake 50-50 ownership deal. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And primarily this company was set up initially as a place to hold equity from the equity stake of Bohai Harvest. Is that correct?
What I was told by the partners at the time, it was set up to do that and invest in other businesses. I think Devin Archer subsequently testified to that effect, and it included monies that were paid from the bond fraud, $15 million that was wired to that RSB account as well.
Yeah.
So it conducted multiple transactions as you depicted in that diagram.
And even if this were legal and there was no impropriety here, it's very concerning because this company's set up to basically compete against America's energy interests at the behest of CCP. Then we have other flows into Rosemont Seneca Bohai from Burisma. We all know about Hunter's $1 million salary that he received for sitting on the board and providing no actual function there. And so we have $1 million salary going through Rosemont Seneca to Hunter Biden. And then this is interesting. We have a meeting with Kazakhstani Kens Rekashev. And what gets me here is the $300 at the end of the $142,300 that goes into this. And then the next day went to a Porsche dealership for a car for Hunter Biden. Now, what's interesting about all this, of course, is that each of these not only flowed money through the shell companies to Hunter Biden, but each of them also involved important meetings with, of course, President Biden. And so on December 4th, we have coffee with Jonathan Lee, who was one of the members who started Bohai Harvest. And he was connected with the CCP. They were having trouble getting licensed to work because, of course, the CCP has to get permission for that, until Hunter flew over on Air Force Two with Vice President Joe Biden at the time. They met with Jonathan Lee. Hunter introduced him. Joe ended up writing a letter of recommendation to Jonathan Lee's daughter to get into college. And then we see that this relationship continues to be formed. Of course, in the Ukraine, we know that April 16th, 2015, Joe Biden had dinner with a Burisma official at Cafe Milano. Seemed to be a popular spot because Joe Biden also had dinner with Kens Rekashev there. All in flow to going here. And of course, as Tony Pawlowski has pointed out several times, this all comes down to eventually the one big guy who gets 10% for the big guy. And so we know that all this money flowed through this to get to Hunter, and then we know, of course, that 10% went to the big guy. So, Mr. Bobulinski, does this general pattern of Hunter offering foreign access to Joe Biden, Hunter gets paid, and then Joe gets a share of that, is that basically what the general practice across many of these shell companies were?
Congressman, as I outlined, the big guys, clearly Joe Biden. The details of some of those transactions I was not involved in, but that's clearly how they operated.
But that's the
talked,
pattern
and thought.
that we've seen over. And Mr. Galanis, you said at the beginning that Hunter didn't really provide any sort of intellectual propriety asset value or anything of the sort, that his entire value was the brand. Is that correct? How did you state that?
Yeah, we didn't rely on him for any work product other than delivering the Biden lift.
The Biden lift. And one more question for you, Mr. Galanis. Did you offer to provide information on Hunter Biden and Devon Archer back in 2016 to prosecutors and the SEC, and what happened there?
Yes, through counsel, I had offered to provide information specifically on that to the SDNY. And I subsequently also did the same thing to the Securities and Exchange Commission, which was interested in, subsequently was told to quash that interest. I understood that to be an order from the Southern District of New York to quash the SEC information.
Thank you, Chairman. I yield back.
Gentlemen's time.